When we think about the great fortunes of the Philippines, a handful of towering names instantly rise to the surface. Sai, Iyala, Gokongwei. These are the modern-day titans of industry, the families whose surnames are stamped across shopping malls, bank headquarters, and sprawling condominium developments that shape the country's urban skyline. Their stories are well-documented legends of ambition and achievement, dynasties built from the ground up that have profoundly shaped and continue to shape the Philippine economy. We know their public personas, their corporate empires, and the staggering figures that Forbes carefully tallies year after year. They are the acknowledged royalty of Filipino commerce. But what if this familiar narrative, impressive as it may be, is only part of the truth? What if some of the deepest, most enduring sources of wealth, power, and influence in the Philippines are rooted in a history that has largely remained unseen? This is a story that has existed in plain sight for generations, quietly interwoven into the fabric of Filipino high society, yet rarely spoken of openly. It is a sweeping narrative that links the dazzling golden age of Philippine cinema to the hushed, mahogany-paneled boardrooms of the nation's most powerful corporations. It is a multi-generational saga of faith, migration, resilience, and survival, stretching back centuries, from the shadows of the Spanish Inquisition and the devastation of World War II to the rarefied heights of Manila's contemporary elite. So let's be clear from the very beginning. This is not a simple ranking of the country's wealthiest women, with net worths neatly lined up like figures on a balance sheet. The truth is far more layered, more subtle, and far more compelling. The story of Jewish identity and heritage in the Philippines is one of quiet assimilation, of names altered for safety, of histories deliberately obscured in the pursuit of survival and acceptance. It is a legacy often invisible to the casual eye. We are about to draw back the heavy velvet curtain on the Philippines' most exclusive and private circles to explore the surprising, and in some cases unconfirmed, Jewish heritage of some of its most powerful and influential women. From beloved film icons who became national treasures, to discreet matriarchs presiding over formidable and seemingly untouchable business empires, we will uncover the marriages that forged dynasties and the hidden ancestries that may have formed the unseen foundation of immense fortunes. This is the untold story of the Philippines' most influential Jewish Filipino wives, a deep and revealing journey into a history that has lingered in the shadows for far too long. Did you know that the wife of one of the most powerful and genuinely feared businessmen in Philippine history, a man whose empire was once rumored to account for a staggering portion of the national economy, may have borne a surname closely linked to the creators of the atomic bomb? Or consider this. What if the universally adored Queen of Philippine cinema, cherished by millions, was born with a middle name that traces directly back to the earliest Jewish families who settled in the country and helped shape modern Manila? Welcome to the hidden world of the Philippines' true power brokers, the women who so often stood as silent partners, the steady force behind immense fortunes. These stories are not merely about wealth. They reveal a legacy so deep and so enduring that it helped transform not only the nation's business landscape, but its cultural identity as well. Before we can begin profiling the extraordinary women on this list, we must first journey back in time. To truly understand their influence, we need to explore how a small, discreet Jewish community came to take root in the Philippines, and how its legacy continues to echo through the highest levels of power today, came into being, and even managed to flourish in a country that is overwhelmingly and devoutly Catholic. The Jewish experience in the Philippines was never defined by large visible communities with clearly marked neighborhoods or public institutions. Instead, it unfolded quietly, through resilient and nearly invisible threads woven deep into the nation's social fabric over centuries. The earliest Jews to arrive on Philippine shores did so under the constant and terrifying threat of persecution. At the height of the Spanish Inquisition in the 16th century, Spain and all of its far-flung colonies were perilous places for anyone who openly practiced Judaism. Countless individuals and families were forced to convert to Christianity, becoming known as conversos or Marranos, in order to survive under the relentless scrutiny of the Inquisition. Its powerful tribunal, based in Mexico, prosecuted cases that extended even to the Philippines. Some of these newly converted Christians fled to the most remote edges of the Spanish Empire. The Philippines, as its most distant colony, became a logical, if desperate, destination. By the 1690s, historical records reveal that two brothers, Jorge and Domingo Rodriguez, were arrested and prosecuted by the Mexican tribunal for secretly practicing Judaism after having been associated with the islands. For centuries, Jewish presence in the Philippines was forced deep underground. Faith practiced in secrecy, heritage deliberately concealed as a means of survival. A second, more visible, and economically influential wave of Jewish migration arrived much later, in the 1870s. In the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War, three entrepreneurial Jewish brothers from the Alsace-Lorraine region of France fled the devastation in Europe. They found both refuge and opportunity in the Philippines. There, they established a jewelry and general import business called La Estrella del Norte, which soon became a legendary name in Manila's premier commercial district, the elegant Escolta. Alongside other Alsatian Jews, including Leopold Kahn, who would later rise to lead the firm, the Levy brothers formed the core of a small but economically vital Jewish community in Manila. These were not merely refugees, they were pioneers and innovators. They are credited with introducing transformative technologies to the Philippines, including automobiles, photography, and even the country's earliest motion picture machines. They integrated seamlessly into local society, married into prominent Filipino families, and established roots that would eventually intertwine with the highest levels of Philippine elite life. Yet the most dramatic and emotionally powerful chapter of Jewish history in the Philippines was still to come. In the 1930s, as Nazism cast its terrifying shadow across Europe, countries around the world began closing their doors to Jews fleeing for their lives. One nation after another turned them away. And yet one country, still not fully independent, chose a different path. The Philippine Commonwealth, under the courageous leadership of President Manuel L. Quezon, opened its arms. The story of how this came to pass feels almost cinematic. The Frieder brothers, American Jewish cigar manufacturers based in Manila, used their influence and their now legendary poker games to advocate for European Jewish refugees. Gathered around their card table were some of the most powerful figures in Asia at the time: Colonel Dwight D. Eisenhower, U.S. High Commissioner Paul V. McNutt, and President Quezon himself. As horrifying reports from Europe began to surface, this unlikely group devised a bold and deeply humane plan. With McNutt's critical diplomatic backing, President Quezon established a national open-door policy for Jewish refugees. Despite opposition from those who feared economic or social disruption, Quezon remained unwavering. He famously declared his resolve and went so far as to offer his own private land in Marikina to help house the incoming refugees. Between 1937 and 1941, the Philippines accepted approximately 1,200 to 1,300 Jewish refugees who came to be known as the Manilaners. It was an extraordinary act of humanity at a moment when much of the world chose indifference. Plans were originally in place to welcome tens of thousands more, but the brutal Japanese invasion of the Philippines in 1941 brought the effort to a sudden and tragic end. During the war, Manila's synagogue was destroyed, and the entire Jewish community, both long-settled families and newly arrived refugees, endured the shared horrors of occupation. This layered history of hidden conversos, pioneering European merchants, and Holocaust survivors forms the fertile ground from which the stories in this video emerge. It explains why Jewish heritage in the Philippines so often reveals itself only subtly, in a surname, a half-remembered family story, or a long-forgotten ancestor. It is a legacy shaped by survival, assimilation, and quiet, understated influence. And against this profound historical backdrop, we now turn to our first figure, a woman whose name is inseparable from Filipino stardom. In the vast, glittering pantheon of Philippine cinema, few stars have ever shone as brightly, or endured as long, as Susan Roses. For more than 6 extraordinary decades, she embodied elegance, grace, and the idealized image of Filipino womanhood on the silver screen. Rightfully hailed as the Queen of Philippine movies, She appeared in over 130 films and captured the hearts of multiple generations. Her life unfolded like a national fairy tale, the country's most beloved actress marrying its most revered leading man, Fernando Poe Jr., known simply as the King. Together, they were more than a celebrity couple. In the eyes of the public, they were cinematic royalty, a living symbol of cultural perfection. Yet behind the iconic face and famous name lies another name, a quiet clue pointing to a deeper and more resonant history. She was born Jesusa Purificación Levi Sonora. That middle name, Levi, is not incidental. It is a direct and traceable link to the very foundations of the modern Jewish community in the Philippines. Susan Rosas's maternal lineage descends from the influential Levy family, specifically from one of the entrepreneurial brothers who arrived from France in the 1870s and helped establish the celebrated luxury goods store, La Estrella del Norte. Genealogists, historians, and numerous scholarly accounts have confirmed her French Jewish ancestry as a documented, if rarely highlighted, part of her background. While the precise branch of descent remains a matter for detailed historical reconstruction, the Levy connection itself is well established and undisputed. This alone places Susan Rosas among the most prominent and beloved Filipinos of known Jewish descent in the nation's history. Her lineage is neither rumor nor legend. It is a verifiable thread connecting a cinematic queen to the pioneering Jewish families who helped shape Manila's commercial and social life. And her wealth, therefore, cannot be measured solely in pesos or dollars. Though she was undeniably financially successful through her long and prolific career, her true fortune lay in her unparalleled influence and moral authority. When Fernando Poe Jr. ran for president in 2004, Susan stood steadfastly at his side, projecting grace, dignity, and quiet strength that resonated deeply with the public. After his sudden and tragic death following the election, a loss she and many supporters believed was the result of massive electoral fraud, she emerged as a powerful and credible voice of opposition, boldly calling for the resignation of the sitting president. Her words carried the weight of a grieving yet resolute queen, and when she spoke, the nation listened. Her story is a poignant and powerful illustration of the very theme we are exploring. A woman of verifiable Jewish descent who married into the absolute pinnacle of Philippine cultural and political life, quietly shaping history from the center of it all, of Filipino influence, forming a powerful dynasty rooted first in culture and eventually extending into politics. That remarkable legacy continues today through her daughter, Senator Grace Poe. While Grace Poe is adopted and therefore does not carry the biological bloodline of either the King of Philippine cinema or the Jewish Levy family, she undeniably carries their name, and more importantly, their enduring legacy of public service, moral authority, and popular influence into the highest levels of Philippine government. Susan Rosas's life is a powerful reminder that true power is not measured solely by assets or balance sheets. It resides in legacy, in influence, and in the stories carried through names as much as through blood. Hers is not a tale of a hidden faith, but of a heritage so fully and seamlessly integrated into the Filipino identity that its origins faded into near obscurity, becoming a quiet footnote to a life lived under the brightest of spotlights. If Susan Rosas represents the visible, cultural form of power that can emerge from a discrete heritage, our next figure inhabits a world that is far more private, far more insulated, and arguably far more formidable. We now turn to a name synonymous with one of the most powerful and controversial political business dynasties in Philippine history, Cojuangco. And at the center of this vast empire, serving as its quiet and enduring matriarch, stands Salud Gretchen Open Cojuangco. To understand her significance, one must first grasp the almost mythic empire she married into. Her late husband, Eduardo Danding Cojuangco Jr., is a name that for decades has evoked a potent mix of awe, respect, and, for many Filipinos, deep unease. A master strategist in both business and politics, Danding Cojuangco was a famously close associate of President Ferdinand Marcos and a key member of the so-called Rolex 12, the secretive inner circle that planned and executed the declaration of martial law in 1972. His business interests were immense, but the crown jewel of his empire was San Miguel Corporation, the country's largest and most dominant food and beverage company. He took decisive control of the firm in 1983, allegedly using billions of pesos drawn from the highly controversial Coconut Levy Fund, a tax collected from impoverished coconut farmers. Under his stewardship, San Miguel evolved from a food and beverage powerhouse into a sprawling, diversified conglomerate with major stakes in energy, power generation, oil refining, and national infrastructure. At the height of his influence, rumors circulated that his personal business empire accounted for as much as 25% of the Philippines' entire gross national product. While that figure is almost certainly exaggerated, the fact that it was widely believed speaks volumes about the staggering scale of his economic and political power. When he died in 2020, Forbes listed him as a billionaire, though many analysts and critics contend that his true wealth was far greater and far more concealed. Standing beside him throughout these decades was Salud Gretchen Oppen Cojuangco, herself an heiress to substantial sugar estates in Negros. She married into a realm of power and wealth that few could ever imagine. Following her husband's death, she and their 4 children inherited his vast fortune. While her personal net worth remains undisclosed, she is widely regarded as the matriarch of a multi-billion-dollar family empire and is unquestionably among the wealthiest women in the Philippines. But what places her squarely within our story, what makes her a figure of particular intrigue, is her maiden name, Oppen. The surname Oppen, along with its more widely recognized variant, Oppenheimer, is a well-established Ashkenazi Jewish name originating from Germany. Of course, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the famed father of the atomic bomb, came from a prominent German Jewish family with no known connection to the Philippines. However, seeing a distinctly European surname like Oppen within a powerful and wealthy family from Negros raises a fascinating and provocative question. Could there be a forgotten or obscure Jewish link in her ancestry? Let us be absolutely clear. This remains speculation based on onomastics, the study of names. As of now, no definitive public records have emerged that confirm Jewish heritage in the family line of Salud Gretchen Oppen Cojuangco. Unlike the thoroughly documented Levy lineage connected to Susan Roches, the historical record surrounding the Oppen family of Negros is far less transparent in publicly accessible sources. Her ancestry is more commonly traced to prominent Spanish-Filipino families, such as the Montillas and Lacson clans, which can easily obscure other, older ancestral threads. And yet that very ambiguity is what makes her story so compelling within this broader exploration. It represents the deeper, more concealed, and more speculative layers of possible Jewish heritage in the Philippines. Connections that may have been diluted by centuries of intermarriage, lost to time, or deliberately hidden for social, political, or economic survival. In this sense, Salud Oppen Cojuangco stands as the matriarch of 2 parallel empires. The first is tangible and undeniable, the vast, sprawling business empire of the Cojuangco family. The second is historical and hypothetical, a potential link to the wider Jewish diaspora. Her name remains an open question mark, a powerful symbol of the hidden histories that may lie just beneath the surface of the Philippines' most influential families. The stories of Susan Rose and Salud Oppen Cojuangco are dramatic, high-profile examples, but they are far from the only threads in this intricate tapestry. The Jewish legacy in the Philippines has characteristically been a quiet one, revealing itself not through grand declarations, but through business records, philanthropy, education, and community building. Beyond the influential Levy family, other Jewish families such as the Bachrachs and the Netzorgs left an enduring imprint on the nation. Emil Bachrach, who arrived in the Philippines in 1901, is widely regarded as the first American Jew to settle permanently in the country. He built a major transportation empire and became such a respected philanthropist that when Manila's first synagogue was established in 1924, it was named Temple Emil in his honor, a testament to his central role in the community. The Netzorg family was likewise prominent in both business and education, and played a key role in efforts to rescue and resettle the Manilaners fleeing Europe in the late 1930s. These families integrated deeply into the highest levels of Filipino society. Leopold Kahn, a contemporary of the Levy brothers, eventually became president of the prestigious La Estrella del Norte and married into a local Filipino family. So renowned was his charity and civic spirit that in 1934 he, a practicing Jew, was awarded a papal knighthood by the Archbishop of Manila. It was an extraordinary and almost unheard of honor, bridging religious and cultural divides. Over generations, the descendants of these families carried names and histories that gradually blended into the complex genealogies of the nation's most prominent clans. To understand the scale of wealth being discussed, it helps to look at a modern benchmark. According to the most recent Forbes lists, the richest individuals in the Philippines today are the Sy siblings, heirs to the SM Prime Holdings empire. Teresita Sy Quezon, the eldest daughter of the late tycoon Henry Sy, frequently tops the rankings as the country's wealthiest woman, with a personal fortune measured in the tens of billions of dollars. The staggering wealth of the Sy family provides essential contemporary context for what rich truly means in the 21st century Philippines, serving as a powerful backdrop against which these more subtle, historically layered stories of heritage, identity, and influence unfold. And in the modern era, the Jewish-Filipino connection continues to evolve in intriguing new ways. While earlier chapters were often defined by assimilation and hidden identities, a new story is now being written, shaped by globalization, renewed historical inquiry, and a growing willingness to rediscover the past. Today, there is a growing and vibrant community of Jewish Filipino couples and families spread across the globe. These are not typically unions of billion-dollar dynasties, but they represent something just as meaningful, a living cultural bridge between two ancient peoples. Countless personal accounts, shared through articles, interviews, and online communities, tell the stories of Filipinos marrying into Jewish families in countries such as Australia, the United States, and Israel. In many cases, these unions lead to deep and genuine engagement with Jewish life, with Filipino spouses and their children joyfully celebrating holidays like Hanukkah and Passover alongside cherished Filipino traditions such as Noche Buena. There is also a uniquely modern phenomenon emerging from Israel itself. Many Filipino caregivers and overseas workers have formed lasting relationships with Israeli citizens. Some have chosen to undergo the rigorous process of formal conversion to Judaism, creating a new and distinctive dimension of the global Jewish community, one rooted in Filipino experience and identity. This contemporary reality highlights a profound shift in perspective. For centuries, Jewish heritage in the Philippines was something that often had to be concealed, quietly protected within families. Today, for a new generation of multicultural households, it is something to be openly explored, proudly embraced, and shared with the wider world. This broader context is essential. It shows that the connection between the Filipino and Jewish peoples is not merely a forgotten historical footnote involving a handful of powerful families. It is a living, evolving relationship that continues to deepen across borders and generations. From the hidden conversos of the Spanish colonial era to the global multicultural families of the 21st century, this story spans centuries of adaptation and resilience. We began this journey with a deliberately provocative title, The Philippines' Richest Jewish Filipino Wives. But as we have seen, the reality is far more nuanced, more layered, and ultimately far more meaningful than a simple ranking of billionaires. This was never meant to be a tour through the glossy pages of Forbes, but a deep exploration of the often overlooked corridors of Philippine history and identity. Along the way, we uncovered the remarkable story of a nation that at a critical moment in world history chose compassion, offering refuge to the persecuted and fostering a small but resilient Jewish community against overwhelming odds. We saw how descendants of that community, like the legendary Susan Rosas, integrated so seamlessly into Filipino life that their origins became little-known footnotes, even as they rose to the very pinnacle of cultural influence and public adoration. Her legacy stands as a powerful testament to how heritage can serve as a quiet foundation of strength, flowing invisibly beneath a life lived in the spotlight. We also ventured into the opaque realm of immense corporate and political power through the story of Salud Open Cojuangco, where a single suggestive surname opens a speculative yet compelling window into a possible hidden ancestry. Her story embodies the whispers, ambiguities, and unanswered questions that permeate Philippine genealogy, a field shaped by centuries of colonization, intermarriage, and assimilation, where countless stories may remain untold. Ultimately, the story of Jewish Filipino wives is not about a clearly defined group of ultra-wealthy women who share a single identity. It is about subtle, often invisible threads of heritage, strategic alliances, and profound influence woven through the highest levels of Filipino society across generations. It is a complex narrative of survival, adaptation, and layered identities, deeply personal, fluid, and shaped by history. In the end, the true treasure is not measured in money or assets, but in the stories themselves. The quiet, enduring legacy of a people who found refuge in the Pearl of the Orient, and in doing so, became an unseen yet essential part of its very soul.